Mark Rogers TV with our weekly college football predictions. Going back to week 2, we went 6-10 with a push against the spread. Not good. Did go 17-3 straight up. For the season, 37-5 straight up. We are 19-19 against the spread with a goal of hitting 60% against Vegas. We'd like to hang our hat, though, on 5-0 confidence picks. South Florida and 11 against Notre Dame in week 1. Also LSU with the points and going straight up against Oregon in that huge matchup. We nailed that one. Last week it was Alabama laying the 10 against Penn State. We also hit on Oklahoma State laying the 13 against Arizona. And the third confidence pick was Fresno State getting way too many points against Nebraska and staying tight with the Huskers. Let's go to Thursday night's action. LSU-Mississippi State. The Bayou Bengals, a 3.5-point favorite on the road. Mississippi State, an excellent football team. But let's point out a few things here. The Bulldogs just played a very physical, tough game on the road against Auburn, losing that one at the wire. LSU had a cakewalk against Northwestern State, so they've had a couple weeks to prepare for Mississippi State. LSU with a stifling defense. We saw that against Oregon. They will challenge Mississippi State to throw the ball. The Bulldogs' passing attack is much better than it's been in the past, but Chris Relf is not up to the task. Mississippi State will not be able to run, especially considering they have 2 of their starting offensive linemen out for this game. Take LSU in a confidence pick, -3.5 on the road against Mississippi State. On Friday night, interesting matchup with Boise going on the road again. They'll play anywhere, this time at Toledo in a dangerous matchup. Everybody hyped up on what the Rockets did against Ohio State and taking the Buckeyes down to the wire in Columbus. But Boise State not just going to outrun them on the outside, but this Boise State edition, as we know in the last few years, much more physical. They can play with the big boys. So they have the diverse and more dynamic talent on the outside. They're also tougher. Boise State will rout Toledo, go with Boise State, and lay the 20.5 points. West Virginia, Maryland, this basically a pick'em game. The Mountaineers did not look impressive last week. While Maryland's had a couple weeks to prepare, we still like West Virginia on the road, +1. Auburn, Clemson, this is a confidence pick. Anytime you get the SEC against the ACC, it's a no-brainer. These two teams, mid-level conference teams in their respective conferences. The Auburn Tigers, en route to winning a national championship, struggled with Clemson last year. Of course, Auburn, a much better team last year, but still, it's SEC speed and muscle against ACC speed, which is still top level, but not quite at that level. I know the game's at Clemson, but it's a noon game. Not much of a factor there. Auburn has played in much more difficult places to play. And Wofford scored practically at will, rang up huge chunks of yardage against the Clemson defense last week. So Auburn will have their way. So this one was a no-brainer, just shot out at me. You've got Auburn to win the game straight, plus they get the 3.5 points on the road at Clemson. Iowa Pitt, interesting Big East, Big Ten matchup. We pinpointed this one in the preseason. Iowa bounces back after losing to Iowa State in overtime. The Hawkeyes lay the 3 there. Wisconsin, Northern Illinois. The Badgers, this would seem to be somewhat of a trap game. They're laying 16.5 and going on the road to Northern Illinois, but we like the Badgers to continue to roll after that impressive showing against Oregon State 35-0. Wisconsin, -16 against Northern Illinois. Tennessee, Florida. This used to be a premier matchup in the SEC, but no longer. Although a lot of people around the country think the Gators might be back after blowing out a couple inferior opponents, including UAB 39-0 last week. Tennessee looked impressive in a game that was supposed to be close against Cincinnati at home last week. This one is in the swamp, but we like the Vols to keep it close. Take the 9.5 points with Tennessee. We do like Florida to win the game outright, but against Tennessee, again, Tennessee, take the 9.5 with Tyler Bray at quarterback, who is 6-1 as a starter. Michigan State, Notre Dame, and this line jumps out as well because you've got Michigan State in the top 15 in the country. They are 2-0. Although they haven't played anyone. Notre Dame 0-2 against 2 very tough opponents, and we know what happened last Saturday night at Michigan Stadium. The Irish are a 5.5-point favorite, and although I do think Notre Dame is much better than their 0-2 record, the defense is still porous. Michigan State still has better athletes on defense. Notre Dame with a fine offense, but Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Michigan State's been able to prepare for this game for like 3 weeks, even going into the offseason. So I like Michigan State to win it and win it close. Michigan State plus 5.5 in a confidence pick against Notre Dame. Interesting game in Los Angeles with Texas going out to UCLA. Of course, Texas winning 10, 11, 12 games every year until they got slammed by UCLA last year in a shocker in Austin, 34-12. UCLA was not that good last season. So we've got quarterback issues with Texas. We've got a game on the road. We've got UCLA being able to put up points, but we still like the Longhorns and that Texas talent on the road. Lay the 3.5 and takes Texas to win it over UCLA. Washington, Nebraska, this a rematch as well. Of course, as we remember, Taylor Martinez ran all over the Huskies last year in Washington, 56-17, but then inexplicably, the Huskers lost the bowl game to Washington, and Washington dominated that game. So bipolar action here. We've got this game at Nebraska. Nebraska will win the game, but the Huskies, Washington, keeps it close within the 17, so take Washington plus 17. South Carolina Navy, the Gamecocks with a huge win against Georgia on the road to open up the SEC. This would appear to be a trap game against a game Navy bunch. We know how the midshipmen typically play against big game opponents, but South Carolina pulls away late. It's a close game for about 3 quarters. Take the Gamecocks and lay the 16.5 points against Navy. Texas A&M and Idaho, hate these kind of matchups because you got 35 points on the board, and you have to try to figure out who's going to play in the fourth quarter and how motivated the teams are going to be. These kind of games really hurt us last week with Arkansas, Oregon, Wisconsin, other teams getting huge point spreads and beating the points, and I took the huge points and the underdog straight across the board, just thinking they could somehow keep it within 35 to 40 points, and that's what let me down last week. So this week we take Texas A&M against Idaho, A&M minus 35, but basically stay away from this game. We've got Arizona State, Illinois, interesting cross-sectional matchup. 2 Big Ten and Pac-12 fringe contenders, it would appear to be. Arizona State with a huge win in overtime against Missouri. Illinois has walked through a couple weaker opponents and going to 2-0. So we've got Illinois at home with a pick'em game, but we like Arizona State and that defense, and they've been tested. It was 8 days ago, so they've had some time to recover. Sun Devils win it at Illinois in a pick'em game. We've got Syracuse, USC. Of course, USC is disappointed, but they are 2-0 against Minnesota and Utah. They've squeaked out those wins, and they are still a 17-point favorite with Syracuse coming in with a very porous defense. Yes, USC will win and win comfortably, but take the orange plus 17 in the Coliseum. You've got Ohio State and Miami, people turning on the Buckeyes apparently after that disappointing showing against Toledo in which they only won by 5 and had to hang on for dear life late. Miami a 2.5-point favorite despite losing at Maryland, and suspensions all over the place again, specifically for the Buckeyes in losing their 4 best offensive players now for the third straight week. But we like Ohio State to win. And obviously take the 2.5 points. Can't believe the Buckeyes are a 2.5-point favorite in this game. Ohio State plus 2.5 to beat Miami. You've got Oklahoma State and Tulsa. Cowboys win this game fairly handily, although we know the Golden Hurricane can score. Oklahoma State wins a shootout by 13 plus. Arizona Stanford, big game in the Pac-12. Arizona needs a win. They will not get it. The Cardinal wins, but take Arizona plus 10 in that matchup. Virginia Tech, Arkansas State. The Hokies let us down with a close game against East Carolina last week. They take it out on poor Arkansas State this week coming up. Take Virginia Tech, lay the 24 points. North Texas, Bama, another matchup that we don't like to touch. Bama, 46-point favorite. What are they going to do when the game's 45-7 in the fourth quarter? Will they pour it on or do they kick back? You know, take North Texas and 46 points. Nick Saban typically likes to tuck it under, run the ball in the fourth quarter, and win by 45 points. Arkansas taking on Troy. Arkansas won huge last week. We expect them to do the same this week against Troy. Take Arkansas, lay the 22.5. Okay, game of the week, Oklahoma, Florida State. 1-5 playing in Tallahassee. Again, I'm going to take a road favorite. Don't like to do that, but let's consider